Hi there, and welcome back to our live coverage of Day 2 of the Mackinac Policy Conference. I'm Christy McDonald. I'm so glad that you're joining us. The 6th year Detroit Public Television is bringing you this conference. We stream the whole thing so you can feel like you're right up here on Mackinac Island with us. We are rounding towards the end of Day 2. We still have more sessions to go. We're going to be talking about regional transit in just a few minutes. But to talk a little bit about politics right now, joining me at the big desk is Rick Pluta and Zoe Clark, the co-hosts of Michigan Public Radio's It's Just Politics.
We're at the big desk, the grown-up table.
It is the grown-up table. It's always good to see you guys up here on Mackinac. It's a time when media, we can all kind of come. We're all in one big room.
I love being at the grown-up table for a change.
Yeah, you're at the grown-up table.
Yeah.
We can all swap some good stories. So I wanted you guys on the show because I want to get a good just idea, a sense of how the conference is going, because we always look for a little political veins. And kind of, Rick, what has been your vibe so far of the conference?
The chatter at the conference has been largely about what's going on in Lansing and the Detroit Public Schools bailout, that as we were all driving up on Tuesday, it seemed like there was some progress on what's shaping up as a Republican-only plan in the State House of Representatives. And we should point out that lawmakers typically come to this, not our State House legislators this year, because they're down in Lansing working on that. But the thing is, now it's looking like, with the absence of support from Democrats, with the absence of support from Detroiters, under withering criticism from Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan, that that deal seems to be collapsing or near collapsing.
You know, it's interesting because usually everyone is up here on Mackinac Island for these 3 days, and there's been lobbying here for what is going on in Lansing. And so it's been very interesting, and I know there's been also a lot of phone calls back and forth, but it makes for an interesting political dynamic, seeing as Detroit Public Schools is the biggest political item on the agenda right now, Zoe.
It is, and you're walking down the porch and you're seeing strategists and lobbyists for Governor Snyder going in between other meetings. Rick and I had a one-on-one with the governor earlier this morning, and right afterwards was John Walsh, a strategist for the governor,
his strategy director,
who is working on DPS,
and his chief of staff.
And his chief of staff. So I'm assuming the governor, hearing what the latest was, and then going to meet with more media and other delegates of various things. So it's scattered in, but it is the undercurrent of this conference, along with Flint.
We're seeing an interesting splintering on what needs to be done as far as Detroit Public Schools. Look, we only have, I think, 3 session days left to do something before the district essentially defaults. That the need to do something is becoming more and more urgent. The governor's saying the House Republican leadership has come up with a deal that's not a great deal, it's not our preferred deal, but it might be the deal that we have to take in order to get an infusion of cash into the district. And what we're seeing among Detroiters and Mayor Duggan is no deal, don't take it, stand firm. And so there's this divergence of how to go about it.
Which is why the House Republicans are specifically not here. Why the Speaker of the House, Cotter, said, no, we're going to be holding votes so that these House members who are concerned, we're not going to be here, and, cajoled, arm twisting into something that looked a little bit more like the Senate plan.
Interestingly enough, Flint is obviously a story here. It wasn't main stage, it wasn't center stage, it's not as much as Detroit Public Schools in terms of real action, but it seems to have changed the tone a little bit of this conference in terms of the governor. And we were talking about this, the three of us, a little earlier today.
I have never seen the governor working so hard to be so positive and so energetically so.
Is it coming off to you, though, as slightly sharp, though? It's coming off that he's trying to be so sharp, it almost is angry, everybody smile.
The governor in recent weeks and recent months has been trying to change both the conversation and the tone of the conversation from the sort of the disaster that was Flint. There are, one, other things that he wants to get done, but two, he also would like to instill a sense in people that this is fixable and we can move on, as opposed to, you are responsible for one of the great public service debacles in the nation right now. Remember that Rick Snyder's core competence is not eloquence, not empathy. His core competence is competence. And Flint has struck at the heart of what his governorship is supposed to be about. He wants that mojo back.
And when you're not charismatic, and when you're not emotional, and you're still not getting things done, then you're missing two huge prongs of what it means to be a chief executive, either as a president, as a governor.
Or as a corporate CEO.
Absolutely. I think one of the interesting things, though, Christy, that you're talking about is there are very few things I think we could all agree that Rick Snyder sometimes sounds like Donald Trump about, but one of them was very stark in the past 48 hours, and that is taking the media to task. I mean, I would not have been surprised to have heard the governor say something like, you, the mainstream media. And he called out reporters both yesterday, calling them Eeyore, and today saying that there were some reporters who sounded depressed.
Some people called not this last speech, but the earlier speech, Donald Trump light.
Yeah.
Which
really?
I don't think that he would appreciate the comparison.
Which is interesting because he came out and said he was not going to be endorsing. He didn't make it a formal not endorsement.
That he said what he has been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks, which is that he is not going to engage in presidential politics.
Yeah.
What happened in part because of this conference, that got taken and amplified as to,
I won't endorse Donald Trump.
He's one of the governors who won't endorse Donald Trump. What he said is that he's not going to play in presidential politics.
Yeah, but then you have Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley who was like, well, I think we should probably all circle the wagons around Trump and call it a day.
Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley still has political aspirations.
And actually, Brian Calley.
Yes, and that's the second part of this story
Brian
here.
Calley looking a little more comfortable, though, in the spotlight, I would say. You hosted a panel with him talking about Flint. And from what I gather, at the last time he was talking at the Detroit Policy Conference of the city, he seemed nervous, struggled. Today he seemed at ease.
It's funny. I was at both of those events, and I was moderating. I was moderating a Q&A with a speaker right after Lieutenant Governor spoke, and then I was moderating the panel today. And I do agree with you, Zoe. It was a marked difference.
This Brian Calley was comfortable. He was confident. He showed a sense of humor. That there was a point when he said that
he was sitting very close to Mayor Karen Weaver.
He wanted to get closer to Karen Weaver, and then he got up and he sat down right next to her.
And that's particularly important when you think about the butting of heads that there has been between Karen Weaver and the administration.
And that's why I asked him to kind of address that. I mean, how do you go into a city and say, well, now I'm going to be here 3 days a week, and I'm going to be like the bird on your shoulder and helping you do things, and what's that like? And he really did try to describe that they have a good working relationship, and it seemed genuine, I will tell you, because after they came off the stage, they were talking for a while, and they hugged each other. So let's talk about that kind of second prong to the political story here, as this always seems to be the time of year, or the 2 years out, of course, before the gubernatorial election. Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley, obviously positioning himself. There's also Bill Schuette, who is out there as well.
Dan Kildee is roaming the island.
Gretchen Whitmer, Candace Miller. There are names and folks around milling about.
Is Candace Miller still kind of saying, no, I'm running for the drain commissioner of Macomb County, and is that actually what she's running for?
Well, I talked to her, when was this now, a week ago or 2 weeks ago, before Mackinac, and instead of just going the, are you running? Because of course when you ask any politician that and they don't want to tell you, they're going to go, I'm very dedicated. And I just said to her, I said, well, you haven't ruled out a run yet, and she said no. And I think she is leaving that door open, whether that is narrowly open or wide open. It's open.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting conversation that this is the time in cycle of a campaign where the prospective candidate is still supposed to be showing reluctance, for the sacrifice and waiting to be called to service. That the rest of it comes out later. You don't want to be seen as too craven, too ambitious in terms of seeking the office. Although there's an irony that if you're not really going to do it, that it's kind of cool to be mentioned as a potential.
Kind of cool to be courted a little bit.
Or it can actually do a little disservice, though. You'll remember in early 2014 when Mark Schauer was like, I'm not sure if I want to, if I'm going to, ended up jumping in, and people held that against him.
That
Did
reluctance
you really
was
want
real.
it?
Because he was,
and that's
that
what I'm
reluctance
saying.
was real.
Yeah.
All right, well, hey, it's great to be able to bandy about a lot of these topics with you guys. I'll always fist bump on the big desk with Rick Pluta. And Zoe Clark, plug your show. When do you guys do your segments?
It's Just Politics, Monday mornings at 8:50 on Michigan Radio.
I love it. Should be a billboard. Thanks, guys.